Hello, welcome along to a brand new episode of Writer's Routine. This week we're chatting to the prolific and the wonderfully irrepressible Milly Johnson. Milly became published quite late, getting her first book out when she was 40. And we talk about the path that led to that and why she was desperate for it to happen. Also how she keeps herself concentrating and how, even with 21 novels down, millions sold, she still feels that everything might suddenly slip away.
I just have to keep the plate spinning, and I still feel that every single time. Every single book that comes out, I think, is this the one that's going to end up in Hollywood? Or is this the one that people are just going to say, nope, don't like this, actually, and you're only as good as your last book. I'm going to lose all the followers I've built up through my career, and that keeps you on your toes. But you can't afford to be complacent. You've got to keep the plate spinning.
There is more with Milly Johnson in this week's Writer's Routine. Yes, welcome along to the show. My name is Dan Simpson. This is Writer's Routine. Does what it says on the tin. We inspect, we search through an author's working day. We see how they plan their life and their family and their work to give them the best chance of getting ideas down onto the page, really. And this week we are with Milly Johnson, who has published 21 books since her first deal 20 years ago. In that time, she's become one of the top female fiction authors in the UK. She's been published in more than 20 countries, has sold 3 million in the UK alone. She's been honoured with the Romantic Novelists Association's Outstanding Achievement Award, and her new novel is The Happiest Ever After. We talk about the story and the process of how it comes together from nothing with a very small idea, and for Milly, very little planning. But she doesn't really know the second word that she's going to write, let alone where the story is heading. You can also hear why she wants the best things around her, and maybe why that comes from being an only child. We talk about why embracing her own life has helped her get published, and Milly had a job at one point, which I've never heard anyone else ever have before, but people must do it, right? Milly used to write greetings cards. What a brilliant gig. Getting a joke away in just a few words, making them relevant. Such a precise skill. You can hear how that's helped her write novels and why she thinks it's a massive influence in why people think she's one of the funniest authors around. Now, the new novel is all about Polly Potter. Taken for granted by everyone in her life. The only place where it's working is in her evening classes, where she's learning to write a novel. She's created the character of Sabrina Anderson on the page, someone who has got their life together. But when Polly suddenly finds herself in a seaside hospital with no idea how she got there, she firmly thinks that she is not Polly, but a fictional character, Sabrina. It's a story all about whether she can move on to a new life. Can she remember anything before? Will her past life catch up with her? Or can she get what she has always dreamed of? We find out in the chat with Milly Johnson, and we kick things off with what Milly sees around her in the place where she sits down to write.
I see a wonder of burr walnut. That's what I do. It's my home. This is the engine room of my life, I think, this. So I made sure that I had the best of everything. So I've got the best Mac. I've got a load of antique burr walnut furniture with a lot of drawers that I thought, how the hell will I ever fill these? And now I'm looking for more burr walnut because all the drawers are full. I've got books everywhere. I've got all the things that make me happy around me. Lots of stationery, everything to hand. This is my comfort spot, and it's all very dark blue and very burr walnut, very antique, and it's lovely. I have the most enormous desk, which would not look out of place in the President of the USA's office. But yeah, I've got the best. I think if you were a really serious electrician, you wouldn't go and buy the cheap set of screwdrivers from Argos, would you? You would go and buy the best stuff. And so I've got the best stuff. This is my excuse, and I'm sticking to it.
And considering it is all the best, and you're surrounded by this luxurious comfort, how much of an impact do you think that's making for you?
Well, I think you have to be happy in your working space. And if it is your bag that you like a small office, upstairs in the loft, blah, blah, that's fine. But a writer has to find their happy place. I'd love to go off and write in cafes and things like that, like some people do, but I can't do it. The only place I can write is in here in the engine room. And so it has to be right. I need a comfortable chair. I certainly need it. Even for health reasons, you want it at the right height so that you don't crick your back or your neck. It's these things to consider as well, because writers can sit there for hours without moving if we're kind of in the groove of something. It also has to be near the low and near a kettle, and so it's perfectly positioned. I've got a nice big window at the side of me. I've had to have a big desk because I have cats who wander in and just plonk themselves there, I'm happy in my space, and a writer has to be happy in their space.
Quite a few authors I've spoken to mention writing in cafes or on trains or planes, and it's a necessity just simply because that's the way their life has worked. Why can you not do it? What happens to you when you're in a busy place?
I think I'm too nosy, to be honest. I get too distracted. But I like silence. Some play with me, have music in the background. I don't. I like my head empty so that creative forces can flow in my ear. But it's just the way we are. I'd love to be able to do it in a cafe. I do sometimes work on trains, but that it's not when I'm doing something creative. It's more if I'm doing, social media or something like that. But for the actual creative flow, I need silence and I need my things around me. I need possessions. I'm an only child, and I didn't realize this until within the last 5 years or something, that apparently possessions are very, very important to only children. We covet things. I'm like a magpie with stationery. So I just like my things around me.
Here's what's interesting. I'm an only child. I'm trying to rack my brain to see if I care about stuff. I've tried very hard to not. What I do notice about being an only child is it makes me like both an extrovert, like very extroverted, because you needed that when you were young, right? You kind of you had to be confident enough to, hey, could I play with your ball? Could I come over there and can I come to your house? Like, you had to make friends in a different way. But also, I'm an introvert in that I need downtime. I need decompression after I've been with everyone, and I kind of need to revert to my own, engine room, my own safe space. I don't know, do you find that too?
Yes, I do very much. Like you said, you have to be, because you've got no big sister, have you, to duff up the school bully. So you have to kind of stand on your feet a little bit more. But we aren't used to that family humdrum, I think. So, when we are in busy places, it's nice to have your own company. It is very, very useful, I think, to not be afraid of your own company and to quite relish it. I do. It's like, my friends will say, oh, let's go shopping. And I think, absolutely no way. I'm a total lone shopper. I'm a lone wolf when I go shopping. And it's okay. That's all right. And I think that has really helped my career, because there's so many people who have said to me, I'd love to write, blah, blah, and love to do this as a job. And then they've kind of had a go at it. And they've been bored by their own company after one morning where I'm not. We can put up with being alone, which isn't the same thing as being lonely, of course.
Yeah, that's a very, very valid point. Let me just drop you back in the engine room then. How does the planning and the plotting look around you? Is it physical? Do you have Post-it notes, a whiteboard, notebooks full of ideas, things that are taking you where you're going to go?
I'd love to tell you I had all those, but I have nothing. I can't plan the second word in my novel until I've written the first one. I am the opposite of I would love to do it. I've got mates who will not start writing the actual book until they've got their plan totally finished and polished. I've tried to do that 23 times, 23 full-length novels and all sorts of shorts in between. I can't do it. I can kind of dredge up a very faint plot line for my publishers who would like to brief an artist for the cover really early on in the process, but usually by the end, I will get to a totally different story and get the cover and think, who are these people? I can't remember even mentioning them. I really can't. To me, it's like driving in thick fog. You can only see kind of about a foot in front of you. Or it's like a picture developing in old chemicals. I really can't. I set off with a vague idea of what I want a story to be about, and then just set off and see where it takes me. And it always does. Touch wood, 23 full-length novels now. It has taken me to the end of a novel, but I really don't plan. Not a word.
And we'll get a lot more in detail about this just a little later on. So let's just use you sitting there in a car through thick fog. Do you have an idea of that end destination? And if you don't, at what point does the fog clear so the road sign of where you are actually going to finish appear?
Well, I know it's going to be a happy ending, so let's get that one straight. And I know kind of my two main characters, but they change. They change along the way. And I'll give you an example of this. The book that I've just finished now, which is the one after Happiest Ever After. I had one of my kind of love interests, as it were, was a postman, an Irish guy. And as I was writing him, he was transforming into Liam Gallagher. And which was the right thing. And I don't know how that happened. He just did, and it was right. So if I'd have written a synopsis for my editor and said, she falls in love with this Irish guy, it would have been totally wrong. I set off writing and kind of characters drift on at the side. And it's an odd process. I know it. I find it very, very difficult to explain how I do it. And every time I think I'm going to write this down as I do the book, and I might do it next time and see how I can do it, because it just kind of appears as if by magic. So I will start writing. But the more I write, of course, and the more characters I've got, and I think, I've got my kind of ensemble cast now. I can play with them, and I will see scenarios coming up on the horizon. And of course, the nearer you get to the end, the clearer that you think this is where my book is going to end up. But it really is like one of those old photographs that develops slowly but surely. I've always been a kind of 9-to-5 person. I worked in a traditional working office environment. So that is kind of ingrained in me. And bearing in mind that, there are exceptions where you have to work really, really late, where you can't sleep and get up early in the morning. Usually I will get up. I sleep about 7 hours, take the dog for a walk in the morning. That's really good for me, gets me moving. And also a dog walk is brilliant for just emptying your brain. I think of a lot of good things when my brain is empty. I don't listen to music or anything like that as I'm walking, because that fills your brain, and I need my brain empty. If maybe there's something I'm wrestling with, a bit of a plot that isn't quite right, and I know it's not right, I can feel it. On a dog walk, it's almost like my brain is working in the background and delivers a solution to any problem. So I do about a 3/4 of an hour dog walk, grab a coffee, because that's very important to me. Sit down at my desk. I will probably warm up by doing a few emails and things like that, maybe a bit of social media to check out, if there's anything I need to advertise, etc. Just check the diary, because usually I'm working at last push. I'll think, right, I'm clear today. Where am I tomorrow? Oh yeah, I'm in Venice tomorrow. I need to get a flight organised. Slight exaggeration, but do you know what I mean? I work quite up to the hilt and get organised only about a day or so in advance. Then I'm in it. I don't write. Some people I know write kind of the choice bits of their book and join them up with connective tissue. I don't. I start at the beginning and work through. I've always got a jotter at the side of me because things crop up, and if I might do a bit of research on something, I think, oh, that's interesting. Doesn't work for this book, but I'll make a note for the next book. There's always a book queued up inside you, of course. The next one, you really do have to kind of keep it on one side, because I like to concentrate for the whole on the book that I'm writing. But at the moment, of course, I'm editing the next book. That one I've just put that one to bed, so my brain is now starting to think of the one after that, and I'm promoting the Happiest Ever After. So you've always got at least one book in your head, but so you really have to be very, very good at kind of shutting things out or switching from one to the other, like a train on a track. We're concentrating on this track now. Now we need to concentrate on this track because this edit needs to be in. Now we need to concentrate on this track because you are in full promotional period for the book, as in the Happiest Ever After that we're about to talk about. So I will just start to write. Luckily for me, I've got a partner who's got an office upstairs who is really good at coming down and saying, do you want a coffee? Which is great. I've got, thank you to him for Christmas, one of those Apple Watches that tells you to stand and move around a bit, because it is very important. It is very important for a writer's health. And for years I thought that was just a load of old, rubbish. But then you go to a masseur and they're pounding on you, and it's like they're massaging a big bag of cornflakes, and you realise that you do need to move and you do need to stretch, etc. So a lot of coffee during the day, and I will just power through. I try and concentrate. I'm very bad at kind of not doing it for too long, because the draw of kind of social media and checking in on emails, etc., is always there. You want to know if there's any latest news. So I'll try and not do it every 5 minutes. I mean, the Pomodoro, I presume that you've had writers before who have discussed the Pomodoro Technique to you. And that is, if I think, oh, I'm getting a bit wayward here, I'm wanting to buy something on eBay too much because I've got it in my brain, I will put the Pomodoro timer on. I've got a little timer on my phone, and that is very, very good for kind of pulling you back from the dark side of shopping and concentrating your attentions on the job in hand.
Hello, just very quickly popping back here with a reminder. We've not really defined it in a little while. The Pomodoro Technique is a method to help keep you concentrated, normally by working for 25 minutes, then having 5 minutes off. Some people vary it up. It's called Pomodoro after the Italian word for tomato, because it was developed by an Italian, Francesco Cirillo, who would use a kitchen timer shaped like a tomato to keep himself focused.
I will break off to feed the cats. I do break off during the day to let the dog out. The animals kind of wander in and out, blah, blah. And I'll finish, as I say, it was 9 to 5, but it's usually about 6. If I need to concentrate a little bit more, maybe it's 7. But I try and, because I've got a life as well, and I don't tend to bother with a breakfast or anything. I have a very light lunch at my desk, to be honest, and then I'll have a meal in the evening. So that's nice to let it go in the evening, around about 6. I'll finish off with just checking out social media, etc., and emails. But they are very seductive, that whole social media side, and sometimes, when social media kind of blew up, I think that you were very much in danger if you didn't get a grip on it, that you would spend all day looking at, oh, isn't that interesting? Look at that lovely little puppy there. It's a seductive draw, and you really do have to put it in its box and say, you're there to serve me. I'm not there to serve you. But you have to be very disciplined as a writer. But also we're human, of course. And when you realise that an advert crops up for a Lulu Guinness sale, you kind of have to check it out, because there might be a handbag on there that is half price that would look great. at a signing. So, you have to make sure that you appreciate that, as you are a writer, but I'm also a woman as well, and I do have my weak spots.
What's the aim for the day then? I mean, you sit there and you just kind of work and work until you pretty much done for your stint? Is there an aim, what you'd like to get done?
No, there isn't. I am anarchy personified. If you wanted to interview someone who says, well, I will stop when I've done 1,000 words a day, that is not me. I will work flat out. Sometimes I think my record was 17,000 words in one day. That was early morning to late night when I was on a really tight deadline and needed to get it done. I work very fast when I'm in the zone, and I do fall into a zone. Luckily for me, when I'm in the zone, I really do. But I don't tend to look at my word count. I just work until the point where I think, yep, I'm going to wrap that up for today. Sometimes when I know a really big scene is coming up, it's almost like the last episode of the Game of Thrones. You could watch it that day, but you think, no, I want to savor that. I want to build up a bit of momentum inside me for tomorrow, and I will end it there. So I've got all night to get excited. It's like the Christmas Eve before the Christmas day, and think tomorrow when I get up, I'm straight into this big scene. So if that happens to me, I will end at that point where I don't want to write the big scene at the end of the day. I want to write it the next morning.
You kind of getting in the zone, you being able to just sit there and write isn't, in my experience, something that all writers can tap into. So simply, others find it a bit of a struggle simply to get 1,000 words done. How often is it hard for you? How often do you find the words coming out to be a struggle?
Not very often, if I'm honest with you. I've always been very, very good at kind of, my imagination is very strong. I used to have for many years, since I was a kid, I think, got myself to sleep by imagining me in various scenarios, etc., telling stories in my head, and so I found it very easy to lock on. But again, it's an acquired art. That was all very well when you were a kid, etc., but doing it as a profession. I realized that when I first started writing, it was very easy, as I said, to get distracted. It is an acquired art to sit on a chair at a screen and let your brain tell you what to write. It's weird when you think about it. And you have to get yourself into the zone. So for me, I've got friends who write maybe only 2 hours a day, and I wonder how they do it. I can't do it. I need to get as many words out as my brain will allow. It works very fast. My fingers are very fast on a keyboard, and brilliant for them. If they must have a great life being able to work 2 days, have a career. But with me, I enjoy it so much when I enjoy writing. There are occasions I think when I think this is boring me as I'm writing it, so it's going to bore my reader. I'm totally in the wrong place with this, so that's the time for me. I wouldn't say it was a block, etc. It's just the wrong road, and occasionally what I've done is think, I'll tell you what, I'll hop over that bit and I'll go on to the next chapter, but it doesn't happen very often. But if I do that and carry on writing, by maybe the next day, I've worked out what's wrong, and I've gone back and filled in the gap. I don't like to leave the gaps. I don't like to hop around the chapters and write the ending first. I'm quite methodical. I start at the beginning and work forwards. It doesn't happen very often, but I've had, before I was a writer, of course, I was a writer for the greetings card industry. It was still writing. So I've had 30 odd years of refining my process. And luckily for me, I can get very locked on and very excited about the job in hand. There's a reason why I think I would never be asked to be a ghostwriter, or if I were, I would not be able to do it because I enjoy writing to my own brief. I don't think I could write to somebody else's. I want you to write a story about this, blah, blah. I don't think I could do it. I wouldn't get as excited. And I like to be excited about the work I'm writing about. And that keeps me locked in.
Just very quickly on greeting cards, because you're the first person I've ever spoken to who has done that, well, that I know of. What a refined skill. How helpful was doing that in finally becoming a novelist when it ended up happening for you?
Very. And something I didn't anticipate, even though I always wanted to be a novelist. This was kind of the silver medal position for me, writing copy for greetings cards. And I hit the golden seam, the golden days when the world was like, we need more humour. We haven't got enough humour, and buying kind of. And there weren't many copywriters doing it because, I had people saying to me, that's a job I could do, sit down and write jokes all day. And as I say, sitting down and just writing jokes all day, every day, again, you had to be a certain kind of personality to do that. I think people used to reel off all the jokes that they'd heard on the internet, but actually writing and creating your own jokes is a different kettle of fish. What I didn't realize until I came to novel writing was how important the greetings card skills were to me, because I worked for a firm that was brilliant and taught me the relevance of humour. Because if you walked into a shop and saw a really funny greetings card, a really, really, really funny joke, you would remember the joke and walk out of the shop without the card. But if that card was relevant and you think, that is just exactly the perfect card for my brother-in-law who loves Man United, you will buy that card. You had to have there had to be a pull, and the pull was the relevance, right? It wasn't the humour per se, it was more the relevance. And so I acquired the skill of tapping into why anybody would buy a card. What were the funny things that bound us? What did we all think that we maybe were the only people who thought that? Like, the example I always use is, how many of us thought that Tommy Hilfiger was Tommy Hilfinger? And it was the teams on University Challenge actually sat on top of each other. And it's those things that you think, I thought I was the only person who thought like that. And it was tapping into that sort of humour that a load of, certainly in my case, female humour, female friendship humour, that as friends we all do, that we all thought the same as. And it all, as a collective, it made us laugh. And so my brain was very, very, it used to pick out things. It used to see things and highlight them and think, that's what I'll use in a book, because I know that will be relevant to so many people out there. They'll think, oh my God, this is me. This is my life. This is my sister. This is my mum.
Yeah, and to be able to incorporate that in novels and to make that almost your brand is pretty spectacular. Let's just reflect on the career, because it's, you grow up really wanting to be a writer, and it doesn't quite happen, and then you finally publish when you're about 40 years old, and now 20 years later, 21 books later, you're one of the most famous fiction writers in the UK. So when it wasn't happening, but you were so desperate for it to happen, how did you keep going? How did you keep pushing on with the idea that if I try and hard enough, and if I slightly tweak the way I'm doing things, if I get that perfect idea, then it'll all fall into place?
Well, the word that you said there is key. It was desperation, because there was a thought in my mind that if I got to age 80 and I'd never been on a private jet, how would I feel about it? I'd be all right. What if I'd never been to Australia by age 80? Wouldn't bother. What if I had never pursued the career that I wanted and did everything to make it happen, and I got to 80, that would have killed me, I think. And so I was desperate. What kept me going, I think, because one, I didn't think girls like me who came from up north, who had the backgrounds we had, not bohemian at all, very much get a proper job, I didn't think we got those sort of jobs, but I really wanted it more than anything else. What kept me going was, two things really. The first thing was the knockbacks. I was actually knocked back so many times. Even as a person, I was told that my accent was common, which when you get knockbacks, they either knock you down and keep you there, or you take them and you form them and make them into fuel. And it was because I'd had so many insults about Barnsley being a joke town where I came from, and that my accent was common, blah, 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 that I thought, I'm going to use this. And it made me start writing about setting my books up north, because I didn't think anybody would be interested in books about the north. What also kept me going was just the slightest bit of encouragement from an agent who I'd actually been chasing for 15 years. I landed them in the end, but I was sending stuff out and I was getting rejections. But the woman who read my work must be so sick of me by this time that she actually started putting little handwritten messages on the bottom, and only short, because they get 300 submissions a week, but she'd obviously been recognizing me and said, your work is of a publishable quality, but this is basically your plot's crap, is what she said. And the fact that it wasn't anybody, it wasn't my mate, it wasn't my nana trying to be kind to me saying your work is of a publishable quality, this was a professional person who was saying keep at it. And that's all the encouragement I needed. My work was of a publishable quality. And so I thought, I just need to get the plot. And I kept sending things out, and they kept coming back with a little handwritten note on the bottom. But if you are a writer, a wannabe writer, you will grasp at anything to keep you going. And don't get me wrong, there were times when I thought, I can't do this. I've got a good job. It was all right. I was a bit of money. I was kind of happy, blah, blah. Why am I bothering? Why am I going through this, having to chase it, knowing that it's going to come back? What am I putting myself through here? But that's how much I wanted it. I really wanted it. And as I say, after 15 years, when I thought I'd totally by this time embraced my northernness and thought, I'd been looking on the horizon for a plot. What can I write about? That was it. My plot was in a big bubble and I couldn't get to it. I knew that I had the writing skills because a professional had told me this. I just needed the plot to go with it. I embraced my own life. I wrote a story about 3 women who were pregnant on the cusp of 40, as myself and my pals were, and just embraced my life at my feet, what was around me, women, friends, workplace, northern life. And I got this letter from this agent saying, this is the one I've been waiting for.
We are back with more from Milly Johnson in just a sec. I wanted to quickly pop by to thank you very much for listening to this episode, for following, for subscribing, for sharing, whatever you're doing. It really helps the show. I am very thankful that you are there. There is another way that you can help it. If you fancy slinging a few quid my way, if you're feeling generous, your contribution and pledges really help this show carry on. It's the only way I can keep doing it is by you becoming a backer, and you backing us is by you backing it over on Patreon, and I'm very thankful if you've done that. Just helps me dedicate the time to bring you this show, to do everything, all the back end, all the chatting, the reading, the writing, everything to get you some tips from the best authors around. And as I say, it doesn't require a lot. For that, you get merch, there is bonus content, there's even a way for your book to sponsor this show. So if you like what we do, if you would like to hear us carry on and bring you these chats as often as we can, well, a way to really help that is to get involved and become a backer at patreon.com/writersroutine. Let's get back to it then with Milly Johnson chatting about her new novel, The Happiest Ever After. In this part, we talk about why she is still worried that the next book won't work. Her hard work will be for nothing and her success will quickly slide away. Also, just a bit about the novel, we do cover that, treading lightly around the story though, as Milly is very keen for no spoilers. And we get back to it with a little more on that desperate journey to publication. When she's finally made it, when she's got the book out, how much pressure is there then on the second and the third novel to make sure they are knockout ideas and they're going to help you keep being a writer? And with that thought in mind, why she went back to something that hadn't quite worked before.
One of the books I sent to them, and they didn't think it was strong enough, but they kind of liked it. It was about a woman who just is clearing clutter out in a house and feels that actually, I need to clear all the rubbish out of my life. That was kind of one of the early books that I'd sent to them. But they liked the pregnancy one better because they thought it had a stronger premise. But I'll be honest with you, your whole life is geared up to getting one book on the shelf. And when they say you've got a 2-book deal, I did think, what the hell am I going to do now? I hadn't got an idea for a second book at all. I didn't know if I could write one. But I had that one ticking over and I went back to them with that one and they said, I think that one needs a little bit more experience. Have you got anything else? Well, I hadn't. I hadn't at all. And I was talking to a very, very wise friend of mine at the time, who is, of course, still called Sue Welfare, who doesn't write anymore, who doesn't, she's a crafter now. But in those days, she was like my mentor. And I said to her, I have no idea what to write. I can't think of anything original. 3 Barnsley birds from, on the cusp of 40 getting pregnant was a singular idea. I didn't have another singular idea in me. And she said, well, you don't need it. Think how many times Cinderella and Pride and Prejudice have been reworked. Take a plot off a Hannah and dress it up, make it your own, which is basically what I did for my second one. I'd seen a lovely film called Cousins with Ted Danson and Isabella Rossellini about 2 people who are dumped by their partners and they actually get together, and that's a real love story, very, very simple. And that was my story, and I dressed it up. I made the hero Scottish. I made him ginger because you don't see ginger heroes in books, and all my family are Scots, you see. They're all ginger, and I love ginger hair. So that was my second book. But I had along the way seen, and because you think if you've got an agent, blah, blah, that's it, your career's made. And I'd seen that wasn't always the case. I'd seen that when my book was going out on submission, you think if you've got an agent, you're automatically going to get a publisher. And I saw the fact that people were rejecting my book, and I thought, my God, this isn't going to happen. This just isn't going to happen. So when I did secure a publisher, that was great. But along the way, then I saw people whose first books bombed, maybe their second books bombed, and they weren't given another deal. So I had to keep my foot in that door. I was desperate by this stage. I thought, there is no way that I'm slipping back to obscurity here. I just have to keep the plate spinning, and I still feel that every single time. Every single book that comes out, I think, is this the one that's going to end up in Hollywood, or is this the one that people are just going to say, nope, don't like this, actually, and you're only as good as your last book. I'm going to lose all the followers I've built up through my career, and that keeps you on your toes. But you can't afford to be complacent. You've got to keep the plate spinning.
You're in quite a cushy position right now from the sounds of it, though, simply because of what you mentioned earlier. Your publishers need a little bit of plot so they can tell the cover designers what to draw. How long did it take to build up that trust where they don't need every single facet of what the story is? Because I know for quite a lot of authors and publishers, they really need everything, whereas yours seems quite a bit looser.
I have a very, very supportive publisher. They trust me, I think. I think they think I'm a bit off the wall, but it's worked for me. I had you see, everybody thinks the most exciting thing about an author and publishing is getting that first deal, and it's not. To me, it's when you start getting a readership. The first book will go out. Some people will love it. Some people hate it, never read you again. The second book, people will think, oh, it's that author. I liked her, blah, blah. I'll pick another one of hers up. And then they start thinking, when's your next book out? Because you've hooked them. And I was getting those letters on my third one. I thought, when's your next book out? And I thought, my, that is exciting. I've started to get a readership. Now, my publishers did something very clever with me. They didn't fling £1 million advance at me, which I thought was a bit rubbish at the time. But they built me very, very slowly and very surely. So I went into a few shops and with a bit of stock, and I sold that stock. And so they came back. And as they explained it to me, it's always better if you outsell. And the bookshops come back and say, can we have some more of that book, please? Rather than take a load and don't sell them. There's a different psychology going on there. So they built me very, very slowly. I went out and talked to a lot of readers groups, didn't charge. People used to pay me in scones. Here, I brought you a bag of jam tarts or a bag of scones. Readers groups, just talking about my books. And I might have sold a couple, and people might buy them. And luckily for me, my community has really helped me coming from up north. People feel like they own me, and that is great. I've got the support of the town behind me. They buy my books because I'm from Barnsley. I'm a Barnsley lass, and they bought them and they've spread the word. And so it's been a very slow opening flower for me. When I realized something very strange happened, because I think the publishers wondering if this northern woman and her northern tales would work. When I realized that it was working, I wrote my fourth book was set on a cruise ship. It was called Here Come the Girls, right? And I'd taken 4 girls on a P&O ship all around Dubrovnik and Venice, etc. And the publishers said, well, it's actually the Barnsley thing that's selling it for you. Can you ground a lot of the action back in Barnsley? And I thought, wow, this was not, I didn't think, what anybody was expecting. There was a rogue book. I think it was about book 8 where I wrote it, and it had there's always a little tiny bit maybe of the paranormal in my book, something that can't be explained, something that you might buy into or you might not. It can be explained away, like saying, oh, there's a ghost in my house. No, there's not. There's just a draft love. It's one of those sorts of things. And one of my books, I think I frightened them to death. It had a mermaid theme in it, and the publishers were like, "Whoa, ho, ho! This is a bit whoa." That book won me my first big award, and I think at that point they thought, maybe we both know what we're doing here. Maybe we trust each other really well. We put it out. It worked. So it was a few books in, but I was selling, and I think you'll always get the trust of the publishers if you're selling books. My advances were going up. That said to everybody that I was selling. So it's the sales figures as well. And also I work very hard. They see me promoting my books. I don't just do a book and then let everybody else do the hard work for me. I'm out on the road. I'm doing it. I'm selling my own product. I am my own product. So it was a few books in, but we got to the stage where, I deliver the books every year. Even as over the last couple of years, I've had a few deaths in the family, etc. And it's been hard going, but I've always delivered. Whatever else has been going on in my life, they can trust me to deliver, and they can trust me that I will put the best book out there. If I thought there was a book I didn't think, oh, I'm just writing this for the sake of getting a book out there, I would not let it go out. There is none of my books that I haven't thought is ready, is polished to go on the shelf. I'd rather miss a year than do that. I would lose readers, and I don't want to do that. So we trust each other. But, we've had 19 years of working together. I'm still with the same publisher that I had in those days. They know me, they know my ways, I know them, and we trust each other. And we built that up, and it's very special. I was at an event, shall we say, and I thought, God blimey, what if you were in the position where someone asked you in a crowd to do something, and you couldn't say no and you couldn't say yes, what would you do? Right? That was my initial thought. It wasn't a spoiler in the beginning, but it became the spoiler because it became the note. And I built this scenario around this woman who is in this trapped in a very public place where she can't say the right answer. That was the kernel of the book. And this story started to knit around it. That was it. It gave me nightmares to even think about it. Anybody who's read the book will know the scene that I mean, but it is a bit of a spoiler, so I can't tell you what it is. I'd love to. I'd wish everybody in the world had read it, and then I could tell you what it was. But it was an impossible situation. It was one of those things that makes you feel cold. My kids used to do this to me when they were younger. My little boy was really good at waking you up and saying, Mum, if a lion ate you, would you rather it started at your feet or your head? And then you're thinking, and then you're getting all stressed thinking about it. No, you have to pick one. And I think, no, I don't have to pick one. It's one of those kind of stressful situations. Would you rather die by a fire or drowning? One of those sorts of things where you think, why am I even stressing about that? But it's akin to that. One of those situations where you're in where nothing is the right answer. And it gave me nightmares writing about it. I was stressed writing the scene, but it was brilliant because I thought if I'm getting stressed out writing it, then my readers are going to get stressed out reading it.
Yeah. Now I know that you don't plot, and it's hard to discuss this because of you don't want to spoil, obviously. But you did mention that you can you've always got a novel on the back burner in your brain. You always kind of have an idea of what's coming next. It's just finding the right time for it. So what, I guess very grandly and openly, what are you doing next? When you've got that initial idea, what are you asking yourself? What are you doing whilst it percolates away before it's in a position where you can write that first sentence?
Okay. Well, I'm in a position at the moment of selling my late parents' house, my family home, right? And it's quite emotional for me because if somebody comes into a house that you love and says something negative about it, you immediately have to stop curling your face and wanting to deck them. Right. So while I'm showing people around my house and hearing them say, oh, it needs a lot doing to it, and you're saying, no, love, you want to do a lot to it. That's not quite the same thing. All these emotions were running around and I just thought as the people went upstairs, this is a book, right? So this is my story, right? One of the future one that I'm about to write about a woman who is selling a house. And I thought, right, okay, that's not enough for a book. We need something else. She's an estate agent. Let's make her an estate agent. So it's once I've got that seed in my brain, things start to knit around it. And I've got obviously my late parents in my brain. What if this woman can see the spirits of people in the house who once owned the house? And this is all going on in my brain while the people are upstairs walking around this house. And so I came back, started to jot these ideas around, and that is very slowly, it's like little other things gravitate towards it. Now, write it. Now, at the moment, I'm not in the position to fully commit to writing that book, but that's as much as I've got on this house. And I've got a grumpy guy there who is selling a house. I haven't done one for a while. I haven't done an enemies to friends kind of romance. And I do like writing those. I used to love the Rock Hudson and Doris Day kind of films when I was younger about they hate each other and then suddenly they're in love with each other. I loved all those, and so that's as much as I've got on that book. This woman, this estate agent, this guy who, he's selling a house, but there's a spirit in this house that he thinks she's made up and he thinks she's nuts. So that's as much as I've got. And I will start writing that story, probably with not much more than that. I'll think of a name, I'll think of an opening scene, and then I'm away. That's how I write.
Now, because... well, your voice is so strong just chatting to you, and I know that voice very much comes across in your work, and with writing greetings cards. The humour is there. You're known for your jokes. So how much thought are you giving to the words on the page? I mean, you said you don't plot the second word you're writing, but how much thought are you giving to all the technical details of writing? So the word, the sentence length, the paragraphs, how a chapter is ending.
I give a thought to every single word I put down, not in the first draft, I might add, because what I want to do is get a large amount of clay that I can pat into a shape, right? So I will throw the words down and get a first draft. Norman in chapter 1 might be Eileen in chapter 5, right? I'm not too precious about that. I'm not bothered that I might have a million word bigs in one sentence, right? I just throw it down. But then that's the process for me. My process is, of course, that I do a lot of editing. After I've got that first draft, and it's in no plan at all, I'll run a calendar off. I have a calendar of the year, and I plot backwards. I know when my book is going to end. When I've got the first draft out, what time of year kind of I need it to end and then I work backwards and I plot it into a calendar so I know what's happening when. And then I might do another edit on the continuity, so I make sure that the people who have got green eyes in chapter 1 have got green eyes in chapter 5, blah, blah. But then I refine it. I look at the dialogue. I make sure that I haven't got too many repetitive words. When I get to the copy edit stage with my copy editor, I love, I turn into this anal being who pores over every single word to make sure it is the right word. I drive her insane. I'll say, would that be better? I've got a walk on by there and a walk on by in chapter, 5 pages later. Is that going to jar? And so I turn the other way. I become very, 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 very stringent, very controlling on every single word. But I pore over. I'm just at that stage at the moment with my next book, with 22, where I'm looking over every single word. And it's infuriating, but at the same time, I have to make sure that if I'm reading it, I think, oh God, I should leave that really. I shouldn't. It's fine. Everybody else's eyes will just gloss over that word. But if my eye snags on it, I have to change it. So every single word at the later drafts is put down, is altered to fit. But at the first draft, no, I just want it out there because I need to get the story to pass into shape.
Well, final question, I think, Milly, actually. Technical-wise, we get a bit geeky. What software do you write with? What's your preferred font?
Oh, well, my preferred font is American Typewriter. I love that. But, yes, I love it. For first drafts. Although when I run it off later on, because I need to jiggle my eyes around, I'll make sure that it's not double spaced, it's single spaced, and I change it to Baskerville old font. I think it is Baskerville, just to jiggle it because it's very different to American Typewriter. I have a Mac. I have an enormous Mac. I've tried writing with Scrivener. I've tried doing all those fancy kind of things, but I can't do it. It's simply Mac. And it's one document. So you're absolutely, totally in danger of losing it, as I have a couple of times if I've not sent it to myself. And if your document has got kind of corrupted, etc. But I can't do it. I can't write any other way than in Mac, on a Word Mac. They need to improve it actually because it doesn't run as well as it does on Microsoft, I don't think. But Word, American Typewriter, and then change it to Baskerville.
And that is it for this week's Writer's Routine with Milly Johnson. That new book is The Happiest Ever After, and you can pick up a copy right now. Thank you to Milly coming on the show. Thank you to you for listening, and if you're supporting us on Patreon, if you'd like us to carry on, if you'd like to hear as many authors as you can, more or less every week, bringing you brilliant chats, a real way that you can help out is to get to patreon.com/Writers Routine and see what you think while you're there. You can get in touch using the contact page at writersroutine.com. and I will be back with a brand new author next week on the show. Until then, I'll see you soon.